Good evening, Northern Colorado. This is N0NYY, November 0, November Yankee Yankee, Bart. I am located in Evans, Colorado, and I will be net control for this evening's NCARC Monday Night TechNet. This net meets every Monday night at 6 p.m. The purpose of this net, as most of you know, is to exchange information, answer questions, discuss topics, help provide an opportunity for newer hams to ask questions about things they don't understand or wondered about. There are usually lots of new folks. There are usually lots of experienced folks on the net. Pardon me, I may struggle with my English a little bit today. It's been a long day. This net may be interrupted at any time for emergency traffic. Should you have a need to do so, say the word break or simply your call sign or suffix, and we will interrupt the net until your traffic is managed and make sure that everything is handled for you. When checking in, I ask that you would give your call sign, first alphabetically, N0NYY, then phonetically, November 0, November Yankee Yankee. Give your name and your location. If you attempt to check in and I do not acknowledge your call, it's possible that you double with someone, and that is an indication that you should go again. I will take 3 check-ins at a time, and I will read back those 3, and then go on with the next 3. So you'll have an opportunity to hear, and like I said, if you try to check in and don't hear me read back your call sign, you may have doubled with someone and not won the double. This is a directed net. All traffic will go through net control. We are a little bit lax about that at times, and that's perfectly okay. We'll let 2 people, if they got questions and answers going back and forth, let them handle that directly, but then we come back through net control when that's completed. Late check-ins will also be accepted anytime through the net if you're not there at the beginning. People that check in late often don't hear the check-in protocol, so sometimes they don't go through the full check-in protocol of alphabetic and phonetic and name and location, but we'll get there anyway. It's not a big deal tonight. First off, are there any check-ins via Echolink that would like to check into the net? Please call net control now.
Kilo Golf 6, Oscar Bravo Charlie, KG6 OBC via Echolink.
And is that Justin, if I remember right, and where are you?
My apologies, I missed that tidbit of information. It is Justin, and I'm at work under a car.
Roger. Thank you for checking in, Justin. Good to hear you tonight. Any other Echolink stations, please call now. All right, and a point of note for those of you that are new or not familiar with Echolink. Echolink is checking in via a computer or cell phone, and you cannot transmit on Echolink until the repeater drops completely. The carrier lets go, there is no signal, then Echolink will allow you to key up and talk. All right, I'm not going to bother with the Alpha through Zulu type thing. I'm just going to say we'll take 3 at a time. Anybody wishing to check in, please call net control now.
This is Whiskey 0, Kilo Juliet Mike, W0KJM, Kyle in Fort Collins with no traffic.
This is KB0YDN, Kilo Bravo 0, Yankee Delta November, Eric, Pinewood Lake.
This is N0EMP, November 0, Echo Mike Papa, Greg in Fort Collins, and I'm going to mess up your 3 count because I am with Debbie, K0DBE, Kilo 0, Delta Bravo Echo. No traffic.
Yes, we have a forple. Net would like to acknowledge W0KGM, good evening Kyle, KB0YDN Eric, N0EMP Greg, K0DBE Debbie. Next group of 3-ish. Go ahead.
This is Kilo Foxtrot 0, Golf Quebec, India, Doc and Pierce.
This is
KF0GQH, Kilo Foxtrot 0, Golf Quebec Hotel, with KF0LAU, Kilo Foxtrot 0, Lima Alpha Uniform, Canton, Lorraine, in Wellington.
We'll break there. I was going to make a suggestion at the beginning of the net for everybody who has never done a net control, that you get a piece of paper and a pencil, and you try to write down the call signs as they come in and see how you do. And you'll find out that it really helps to slow down. Now, I did okay with everybody here so far, but it got to be right on the edge. KF0 GQI and GQH, KF0 LAU. Thank you all for checking in, and we'll go ahead. I feel like I messed up one of those calls. If there's any corrections to any of those last three calls, please call now. Okay, we'll call it good. Next 3 seconds, call now, please.
This is KF0RHA, Kilo Foxtrot 0, Romeo Hotel Alpha, Chris in Severance.
Okay, let's hold there. Then we'll acknowledge KF0RHA, Chris in Severance. And there was a double there. Doubling station, please call it in.
This is KJ7RTB, Kilo Juliet 7, Romeo Tango Alpha, Will in Berkeley.
All right, got you in there. KJ7RTB, got you as well. All right, let's try for the next group of 3, please.
This is
KF0, Foxtrot 0, Australia Delta.
Multiple traffic, KF0ODD, go ahead again with your name and location, please.
This is KF0, Kilo Foxtrot 0, Oscar Delta Delta, Paul from Berthoud.
Thank you, Paul in Berthoud. And the other station that doubled with Paul, go again, please.
Kilo Echo 0, Sierra Oscar Romeo, KE0 SOR, Mike and Windsor.
Very good, got you, Mike. Thank you, appreciate that. All right, next group of 3.
This is WB5TEX, Whiskey Bravo 5, Tango Echo X-Ray, Dale in Loveland.
This is K0AZA, Kilo 0 Alpha Zulu Alpha, Ron at Fort Collins.
W5VV, Whiskey 5, Victor, Bill in Livermore.
All right. This is N0NYY Net Control for this evening's NCARC TechNet. Net would like to acknowledge WB5TEX, K0AZA, W5 Victor. Next group of 3, please call now.
AE0KO, Alpha Echo 0 Kilo Oscar, Brad in Wellington.
Good evening, Bart. This is Whiskey 0 Alpha Sierra Papa, W0ASP, Terry in Berthoud with traffic.
And 0BNK, November 0 Bravo, November Kilo, Rick in the port.
All right, we'll take a break there. Then would like to acknowledge E0KO, Brad, W0ASP, Terry with traffic. Good to hear you, Terry. And 0BNK, Rick. I feel like I know you from somewhere. Next group of 3, please call now.
KF0OTG, Kilo Foxtrot 0, Oscar Tango Golf, Dave in Fort Collins.
W1VAN, Whiskey 1, Victor Alpha November with a PSA.
Kilo Foxtrot 0, Quebec Golf Tango, KF0QGT, John and Eaton.
Okay, we'll break there. That would like to acknowledge KF0OTG, W1VAN, KF0QGT, John up in Eaton. Ivan, what town are you in again? I forget.
I'm in Fort Collins.
Thank you. Next group of 3, please call now. All right. Well, we have a pretty good list. And again, we always welcome late check-ins. Let me go down the list here. After we have Terry and Ivan's information, I'm going to go down the list of check-ins, and I'm going to ask each and every one of you, what was your first ham radio? And
W0ASB. I have a question for the net regarding the difference between peak envelope power and RMS power as measured by your typical amateur radio amplifier. Normally we would consider peak envelope power to be that of a modulated signal, but if you're transmitting a CW tone, then peak envelope power should be the same as CW power. But is that the same as RMS power? In amplifiers and antenna systems, you always have to consider peak voltages, and peak voltages are square root of 2 higher than RMS voltages. And I was wondering if anybody had any insight on this. W0ASB, back to net.
That is an excellent question. I have some ideas about these terms. PEP, to me, is pretty clear. RMS, I know, has a root mean square, is a value of the amount of energy under the curve, but I'm not sure exactly what that curve would amount to. So, who has better information than I on this question?
IBM.
Go ahead, Eric.
The formula the questioner gave for RMS power is indeed correct for a sine wave, which is exactly what a CW signal should be producing at the antenna. But I don't know how you'd relate it to peak envelope power, because peak envelope power is not necessarily a sine wave. In fact, it's probably decidedly different. However, both of them are calculations of under the curve. KB0YDN, back to that.
I always thought that, well, the RF waves are usually considered a sine wave in terms of the RF. But not, well, is that true with CW as well? I'm honestly not sure about that. I do believe that peak envelope power is the upper limit and the bottom limit, that voltage divided by the impedance of the antenna. But again, I'm not 100% clear on that. And I had to answer that question a really long time ago, and I don't remember, so it behooves me to brush up on that. Can we get any other input on this question? Uh-oh. We're not getting as much information as I would like here. Once again, any further input? Okay, Terry, I think you've driven us back to the books. That's probably a good thing.
Okay, thank you. I just thought I'd give it a try. I can actually pull out the oscilloscope and make some measurements on a power amplifier and look at the actual volts peak to peak and the reading that the meter gives, and then quickly decide if it's off by a square root of 2 or not. And that'll tell me whether it's measuring peak power, peak envelope power is, to me, a little bit ill-defined, as it meaning peak RF power, which means how much power is flowing instantaneously at the top of the sine wave, versus the average power that would be delivered to the load that would describe how much heat you would get into a dummy load.
And that ends up being a function of the modulation. Again, with CW, it would be constantly fully modulated as long as there was signal. But with voice, of course, the levels change so much that it would obviously not be the peak all the time. I do have 2 watt meters that have peak and average buttons on them. They're both MFJ. I don't trust either of them. Not very far, anyway. But the average button has a capacitor circuit in there, a rectifier and a capacitor that for the meter movement that tends to hold that voltage a little bit higher. Of course, the meter drains the voltage off the capacitor, but it gives you a little bit of averaging and kind of steadies the needle a little. And then when you're on peak, it bobs up and down so quickly that it's nearly impossible to read. But again, that's an MFJ version, and I'm hoping that there's better ones out there. Okay, everybody that didn't answer, we're having to go back to our amateur radio handbooks.
YDN.
0NYY, Bart, Net Control for this evening's NCARC TechNet. And I know I have homework to do. Thank you, Terry. And who had the PSA? Ivan. Go ahead, please.
It says W1VA, and just a quick pause there. I think that you doubled with somebody if they had a comment on your last.
Okay, thank you. Doubling station. Go ahead, please.
YDN.
Go ahead, Eric.
It turns out if you ask Dr. Google the question, you get a web page from raycom.eu in English that discusses the difference between PEP and RMS RF power. Now, it is a little bit light on equations, but it basically says peak envelope power is equal to RMS power plus peak to average power ratio in decibels. So, doesn't, like I said, go into it in detail, but it kind of gives you a beer and pretzels look at the sort of thing. KD0YDN, back to that.
A beer and pretzels look. That is a term that I have never, ever heard before, but ironically is perfectly clear. So, thank you for your input there. Okay, Ivan, go ahead.
All right, thank you. This is W1VA with a little announcement that if your feet leave the ground, shake your head first and make sure that you're able to survive the fall. I was recently at the job site where I was fully insured and workman's comp, so all the insurances are in place. But if I was climbing Joe's Tower or Thomas Tower as a favor, that might be a different deal. That make sure that you're able to one, get tied off, make sure you're tied off and you're doing it correctly, and what you're doing is worth the hurt. It really hurts, and make sure that your job is safe. That time off from work, your job might be failed by somebody else by the time you come back, being that it wasn't a work-related accident. So just things to consider when you're climbing the tower. Make sure you're doing it safe, and shake your head 3 times before you leave your feet leave the ground. That's about what I got to say. W1VAN.
Good information. Many people, especially new hams, have probably never been up a tower, and it looks like a big ladder, and it looks like an easy thing. And it's not a really hard thing, but as soon as something gets complicated, like you have a tool in your hand and you've got to grab a nut as well as the tool, and now you have no hands left to do the work, you're going to wish you were tied off. You're going to need to be tied off because gravity will beat you up. The bad news is it probably won't kill you. The bad news is it'll just hurt really, really badly. And it's just not worth it. Yeah, a tower is really, really easy to climb. The climb and the descent are not the hard part. The hard part are trying to do anything while you're up there, when you're distracted, when your hands get busy. You need to have a tower belt. I don't presently have one, but I used to, and I used it all the time, and I had it set up just the way I liked it, and it made the job a whole lot safer. But it is never a simple process. It's always a good idea to have another person there. So, in case of an emergency. And if you don't have another person there, and you feel like you're climbing the tower in an emergency, you may end up with a compounded emergency, and it can be a bad thing. 8 or 10 feet, you can seriously break some bones that you really need, like things in your legs, or arms, or ribs. Hopefully not spinal or anything like that. You can get really, really hurt even at a relatively low altitude. So, good idea. Have somebody on standby that knows what's going on. It's a good idea. And don't ever climb without the proper equipment. It's a dumb idea. It really, really is. I know it's just a simple little thing. All you're going to do is go thump. So try not to do that. N0NYY, net control for this evening's NCARC TechNet. Let me drop this here for a second.
W0ASP with a comment.
Go ahead, Terry.
It is my opinion that if you are climbing a tower, even over 5 feet high, and you do not have a climbing belt, I think you should be ineligible for insurance on your injury because it was a pre-existing condition. You were stupid before you started climbing the tower.
I saw a picture the other day of a buffalo. I think it was from up in Yellowstone Park. And it said on the bottom, "You cannot fix stupid. But I can, comma, and it's gonna hurt."
KE0SOR with a comment.
0SOR, go ahead, Mike.
Basically, my answer to that is that, everybody's pretty familiar with duct tape, but duct tape can't fix stupid, but it can sure muffle the sound.
Roger. I'll agree 100%. All right. Do we have any other questions or topics for the TechNet this evening?
KE0SOR again. Just a quick question.
Okay. I think I heard ODD in the back there. There was a double. But SOR, go ahead.
It's just a quick, simple question. I have a Yaesu 991A, and in the crystal display, the line right below the operation frequency, I have an indication there, a symbol that comes up CH/, or not CH/, but CH-D, and I cannot, after reviewing page by page of the manual, figure out what that means and how to get rid of it or change it.
Okay. Another net control piece of advice, always have second, third, and fourth pens handy. Did I understand correctly you're seeing Charlie Hotel and a hyphen?
Charlie Hotel -D. And from the manual, it has to do with frequency tuning and the pre-programmed steps. But I, for the life of me, can't figure out how to get rid of it or how to even get to it or how it showed up.
Roger, understood. Do we have any other FT991 users on the net this evening that can help Mike with this?
I think I might help. TEX.
A Google question. I would have thought that meant some kind of channel reference, but why D? I don't know unless there's A, B, C, and D channels programmed in already or something of that nature. Good question. I'm sorry. I have no experience with that radio.
WB5TEX.
Go ahead, Dale.
Okay, in the menu, it's the channel dial resolution, kilohertz. You can set it, I believe, how fine you want it to dial. Just hit the MCH button, and it should break back out of that.
SOR, I'll give that a try.
Yeah, I think what you're able to do, once you press that, then you hit the little rotary button, index button, or whatever button right there to the lower right of the screen. It'll roll your frequency by that amount, but if you hit the MCH, it'll break you out of that mode.
Okay, this is SOR. I did notice that it changed the frequency by a minimal amount, but it did change the frequency. I will definitely give that a try. I appreciate that very much. Thanks.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the primary reasons why we have a TechNet, so you can find questions or find answers to questions that you may have. N0NYY, for identification purposes, net control for this evening's NCARC TechNet. Do we have any other questions or comments before I go down the list and we discuss our first radios?
ODD?
I'm sorry, ODD, go ahead. You were on standby as part of a double. Please go ahead, Paul. My apologies.
No need to apologize. Hey, I sent a letter just with some information. I hope we can get it out for the next meeting. But I did want to share this with this group. I have been monitoring the support that ham radios have been giving to the Western North Carolina recoveries from the Helen storm. I've been able to monitor first Broadcastify for the tower on Black Mountain. It's November 2 Golf Echo. You can Google that in Broadcastify, or you can go to Echolink and find it there as well under November 2 Golf Echo. They do have they do have a web page for a nonprofit organization providing supplies, volunteers, and they're also looking for even remote support to run the net off that mountain, and you can do that through Echolink if you're interested. So you can go to Broadcastify just to listen in, break. You can also go to Project Helen. It's Papa Romeo Oscar Juliet Echo Charlie Tango Hotel Echo Lima Echo November Echo.org to look and see if you had any resources that could help. And if you go through Echolink, you can also speak up and volunteer to run the net when they need help. That's all I have from here. I appreciate it. KS0ODD.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any questions or comments for Paul on this information? Alrighty, any other questions or comments before we go down the list and talk about first radio? Alright, KG6LBC, Justin, what was your first ham radio?
There was a couple, but the official one that I purchased was a Yaesu VX5R, and shortly after that it had an internal problem and spent some time at Yaesu out in California at their Cypress facility, and then I picked up a Kenwood THS-6A. So kind of a short time window there between the two. So I consider them both my first radio. KG6LBC in the truck on a real radio this time because Echolink kicked me out.
Aw, I'm sorry to hear that. But you sound wonderful, and you did on Echolink as well. That VX5R is a real workhorse, and I'm sorry that you had issues with yours. I have 2 or 3 now, and I love them. One of them, when it powers up, the display doesn't always come on, but the radio still works, and it's probably just that little contact barrier, rubber contact strip. We'll see what that is. W0KJM, Kyle, what was your first radio, my friend?
My first radio was a Anytone 878 handheld, and I paired that with a Brandmeister Skybridge hotspot. And my first QSO was with a gentleman in California somewhere who was filling up for gas, and I thought it was the craziest thing that I was able to talk to California from a handheld. Now, it was cheating, but Bart, I know how you feel about calling it cheating, but I'm still going to call it cheating. It still does work. It still is a valid form of communication, but that was my first handheld and my first QSO. W0KJM, back to net.
Anytone 878, Roger. Very popular radio. And I frequently use that term cheating, but when somebody's life or safety is in danger, cheat every way you possibly can, as long as you can help them out, get the information out, get help on the way, put the person at ease until help arrives, all these things. The more ways you have to cheat, the better you can do the job at hand. Eric, KB0IDN, your first radio, sir.
My first radio was a Yaesu FT50R, Foxtrot Tango 50R. And first contact was either on repeater as is part while hiking or in the Colorado Connection Thursday night net. KB0YDN, back to net.
One I've heard of, but I've never had one. Thank you. Greg, N0EMP, your first radio. And I'll tell Debbie to be ready to answer, too.
Okay, I think Debbie's listening downstairs, and she's probably scrambling for her HT to see what the model number is. So I grew up, my dad was a ham and an electronics technician for 3M. So I grew up as an electronics and a radio listening nerd, and later was a signal intelligence analyst in the Army. I didn't get licensed until later in life, like 2014, after we retired out here and started going into the backcountry where there's no cell service. So the first radio I have any experience with was growing up in front of my dad's Hallicrafter's SX71 receiver, which sadly has been lost through the decades, but I bought another one a decade ago from a guy up in Casper, and so I have an SX71 receiver. I got licensed about 2014, and the first radio I bought after I got licensed is a Yaesu FT60, and I complemented it with the Nagoya 771 antenna. Let me reset this. Complemented it with the extended Nagoya 771 antenna per the recommendation of Mark Clark, W2 MIC. The first contact I had was off my back deck with Charlie Brown. I think his call was KF0CB. N0EMP.
That SX71 was a hugely popular receiver. And yes, you're correct. W2MIC and KF0CB Charlie Brown. K0DBE, do you know or have the information on your first radio?
Yes, Mark, I do. It is a Yaesu FT60, and it is, Greg bought it for me right after I became licensed in approximately 2016. My first contact, I believe, was Luann.
Another FT60. Very good. Very good. And I bet Luann was all excited when you got on the air, too. Thank you very much, Debbie and Greg. KF0GQI, Doc.
My first radio, little Baofeng handheld at BF F8HP, and my first contact was club meeting on Wednesday night.
Excellent. Good information. I'm surprised we've gotten down the list this far before the first Baofeng showed up, because they're off. I think an awful lot of people lately in recent years have had those as their first radio. Thank you, Doc. KF0GQH, Kent.
KF0GQH. Our first radio was a Baofeng also, F8HP, and I believe the first contact was Wednesday night club meeting. Let me hand it to Lorraine.
KF0LAU. My first radio was a QRZ-1 given to me by QRZ when I got my license. I don't remember my first contact.
Roger. I've heard of QRZ as the search site, but I had not heard of a QRZ brand radio. Very interesting. Thank you, Kent and Lorraine. Let's see, who's next? KF0RHA, Chris. I hope I got your call correctly, but for some reason I scribbled a lot, and I'm not positive. If I messed up your call, please correct me. Otherwise, go ahead.
That is correct, Bart. And my actual first radio I used was back in Marine Corps in 2009. We used the original NCARC, the 117s and 119s in there. And then my first radio, once I got licensed after the Marine Corps, I had the little Baofeng UV5R. And then my first HF radio was the L-Craft K3. And my first contact was my uncle all the way in Ohio.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, I'm familiar with the L-Craft KX3. Was the K3 a different model than that, or can you clarify that for me?
Yes, sir. The K3 is the standalone unit because the KX3 is that portable small one. So the K3 is the much larger unit, and then it has the same thing for the pan adapter, the PA3, I believe it is, for it. But same exact setup, same functionality, same button interface on both of them. One's just a little bit smaller there.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Chris. KJ7RTP, Will, go ahead.
Good evening. My first radio was a UV5R Baofeng as well, and my first contact is all of you fine folks this evening.
Very good, very good. Well, my suspicion is confirmed that the Baofengs are starting to show up en masse now. KF0ODD, Paul.
Hey, good evening, Bart. My very first radio was given to me by the number 3 man at Dell as a gift for getting my original technical license. So it was a Yaesu FT60R. I have the original manual in my hand right now, and I just found that old radio. And now I need to find a new battery replacement, and hopefully there's one out there with a USB-C charging battery on it. If anybody knows of one or a charger for that, I could use one. KF0ODD.
EMP.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I think they're still selling the 60R. I bought a couple new batteries a couple of years ago. After one of them started swelling up, I replaced both batteries. I think I haven't seen one with a USB-C charger built in. That would be really nice. The TID radios do that. And an aftermarket for the Yaesu that does that would be really cool. If you see one, find one, let me know. But I think the base chargers are still available, and the batteries, and zero EMP.
Thank you for the input, Greg. Amazon has a non-USB-C, but the standard 7.2 1800 nickel metal hydride battery for it, and Amazon is only $20 a piece. Just looked that up while we were going through it here. All right, where am I? Paul, FT60R, K0SOR, Mike. Do you remember your first radio?
SOR, yes I do. Actually, it was a Baofeng UV5R. It was given to me by W0WST, Bill West in Wellington, while I was studying for my technician license, and so I could listen in. Very much appreciated that, and I also donated that to a gentleman who was interested in ham radio. So that was my first one.
Excellent, very good. WB5TX, Dale.
Yes, good evening. Yes, my first radio was a TS520 Kenwood. I liked about it was the 160 watt out. What I didn't much like about it was I probably wore out the VFO bearing, shaft bearings, dialing up and down. Now that I've got a back into ham radio and got a FT991, I enjoy the display that shows me where the things are on frequency. My first ham call was a Whiskey Bravo 2 Charlie Hotel in New Jersey, and that gentleman is still in New Jersey. He had a Yaesu FT101E. He was 21 years old, 3-element tri-bander up 50 feet, and that was on 15 meters somewhere in the afternoon. And he had a 599, and I had a 599 or 579 according to my analog logbook.
Excellent. other than Greg's Hallicrafter, that is the first HF first radio. Okay, transceiver, but the Hallicrafters was a receiver, but that's the first HF one that I see on the list here. Very good. I have a TS520. It's sitting out in the shed, not being used. I have an FT101E. It's sitting downstairs under the table, not being used at the moment, of course. Anyway, excellent. K0AZA, Ron.
Hi, Bart. So my first radio was also a Baofeng, a UV8R. I didn't have it very long before I came to the conclusion that I didn't like it and replaced it with an Anytone 878 and a 578. My first contact was Kenny, N0KIN. Back to that.
Excellent. That's the second 878 Anytone to show up on the list. W5EV, Bill.
Well, Bart, that was about 40 years ago, and I have no recollection of what the first radio was. It was given to me by my Elmer, who happened to be my girlfriend at the time's father, a mobile unit, 2 meters, and he or his wife were probably one of my first contacts. But I think the first radio I remember purchasing on my own was I think it was like a Yaesu FT470 HT, one of the early dual bands. That number may not be right, but it's one of the early Yaesu dual bands. But don't remember the first one though. It's a long time ago. W5VV.
That's quite all right. That is good information. My wife, Jean, N0QXQ, her second radio was an FT470. It is still in the bag downstairs with a hand mic, antenna, and 2 batteries. It still works. I think the batteries are probably questionable at this point in time, but that was a great, excellent little radio. E0KO, Brad. E0KO, N0NYY. Are you still with us, Brad? And N0NYY, net control for this evening's NCARC TechNet. W0ASP, Terry.
Hey, Bart, this is W0ASP Terry. My first radio was a Yaesu VX6 handheld, and my first contact was with KF0CB/SK, and my second contact was W0MI/SK.
The VX6, do you remember what year that was?
I'm a relative newcomer to ham radios, so I would say that was 2005.
Roger. I know the 5 and VX5 and the VX7, but I was not aware of the VX6. Good information. Thank you for that. And N0BNK, Rick.
My first radio was a Ranger 2950. Back then I wasn't licensed, so it was a 11-meter radio, but after I got the license, it was due 10 meters. And the real first one was a Baofeng UV5R. And I still have it. Don't ever use it, but I still have it. And the first contact was Joe on the TechNet and N0BNK.
I was just out at my shed with Tim, and I have a Johnson Viking Ranger, or Ranger Viking, or I think it's Viking Ranger, whatever. Anyway, sitting out there in the shed, waiting for somebody to want it too. Ranger 2950 and a UV5R. I really do speak English. N0NYY, net control for this evening's NCARC TechNet. KF0OTG, Dave. What was your first radio?
My first radio was a Baofeng FAHP, and then right away I also got a UV5R to play around with it, and that was just about a year ago. And I can't remember my first contact. I think I wanted a radio check. Can't remember who got back with me. After that, it was probably the StepNet.
Talk to you in a minute.
Very good. Excellent information. Once again, the percentage of Baofengs as first radios has elevated dramatically. I'm surprised. I'll crunch the numbers later on and see. W1VAN, Ivan, what was your first radio?
W1VAN. Well, this is going to date me a little bit. That's some 40-plus years ago. It was a TS-430, heavily modified for 11 meters. And after getting the license for amateur radio, was followed with a TS-711, which is the UHF, and the TS-811. 711 and 811, we call them the twins, but all three of the radios all have the same color faceplate, so it's a really nice starter radio for me. W1VAN.
Very good, thank you. Appreciate that. KF0QGT, John.
Well, another check-in for a Baofeng. It's the BF SHP, I guess just the UV5R with a little more power. My first contact, I believe I hooked this thing to a mag mount antenna sitting on a cookie sheet in the house here, and made a check-in to one of the Colcon nets a while back. And since then, I guess I've upgraded, if you can say that, to some of these kid radios because they got a nice display and USB-C charging and programming's quite a bit easier, but the old Baofeng always goes in the radio throw bag as a backup because I know it'll always turn on and doesn't mind getting beat up, and it's a little harder to program, but it still talks to people yet.
Roger. Very good. Very good. Thank you for that. Yep, the Baofengs are quite popular. Very, very popular first radios. That's the entire list. Do I have any late check-ins this evening?
W1VA, let's follow up.
Go ahead, Ivan.
Those of you with the DMR radios and the hotspots and such like that, we do have very high-profile repeaters here for DMR. For just dial them in any place you want to go when they're on Brandmeister. If you have fusion radios, we also have VHF, UHF fusion up there that's fully linked into the world. Basically, do wires X and digital and dial where you want to go. So they're all free and open to use. It's not getting enough use. I wish people would use them more. So digital is quite exciting and different than analog because you're able to dial to every place that you could think of. So I just want to reiterate that those repeaters are open for use.
KJM.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Where might we find information on those DMR repeaters and information on like color codes and time slots and all that fun jazz to program that stuff in for any of the new folks that might not know where to find that stuff?
Well, NCARC was nice enough to let us have a piece of the page, their web page there. So just look under the repeaters under the NCARC web page there, and it should be a full listing of all the DMR repeaters that are open for use.
Wonderful. Thank you. W0KJM, back to net.
All right. Once again, any late check-ins?
Yeah, W0OZJ, Fort Collins, Dudley here.
AE0CF, Alpha Echo 0, Charlie Foxtrot, Dutton, Fort Collins, late check-in.
Kilo 3, Sugar Alpha Delta, George and Windsor, no traffic.
Okay. That would acknowledge W0OZJ, AE0CF, and K3SAD. Any other check-ins? Okay, well, we've been going down the list of all the check-ins and asking what was your first radio? W0OZJ, Dudley, what was your first radio?
Well, I guess I have to give tribute to my grandfather, who was W0OZJ in Lee, South Dakota. Had a set of twin Drakes. He was a blind electrical engineer, and I sat there and said hello to many of his contacts when I was a little tiny kid. All over the world, and so I never forget those radios. Well, my first radio, when I got my license, that I actually made my first call was a Yaesu FT5DR, and think I made it on this net on a Monday night.
Excellent, excellent. Well, for old time's sake, you'll have to come over and go through one of my sheds over in Windsor. There's a whole shelf of Drakes out there. AE0CF, Ben, what was your first radio?
Well, I guess I'm still using it. It's this ICOM ICU400. It's actually a commercial radio. I picked it up at a Hamfest at some point, and it's mainly the reason why I got licensed is to figure out how to get this to work, and it's still working now. And as for first contact, the previous transmission happened to be first contact, although it was sort of passive. AE0CF.
Roger, very good. Thanks, Ben. George, what was your first radio?
We'll put in the first vote for the Bouflane UV5R. No, wait, I guess it's been around. First contact was Mark Sheets, K0FNL on the K0FNL repeater. I figured I could hit that from the front porch and succeeded. Aside from one illegal 2-sentence transmission into the TechNet when they couldn't remember what a artificially made grounding electrode was called. And then I forgot what it's called right now, so there you go. K3SAD, back to Jeff.
Well, all right, very good. Let's see. Well, that leaves me. My first radio was borrowed from OJ, and it was an ICOM 02AT. And, of course, OJ and Andy and Cliff, the guy from the Wars Club many, many years ago, were my first contacts on that. That was a loaner radio, and I had to give it back. But the first one I bought was a Swan FM 1210A. 12 channels, 10 watts, 12 volts, crystal-bound radio. I thought I was winning the lottery when I paid $5 for that thing out from under a table at Amfest. Then I proceeded to spend about $60 or $80 for crystals for the stupid thing. Then I went and got another radio after that. But it was the FM 1210A. It worked good. Had to do a little work on it. Had to get the crystals for it, get everything tuned up. But that was a lot of fun. That was in, like, 1991. Anyway, if we have no other questions or comments for the net, this has been over an hour. It's been the longest net I have done in the history of NCARC TechNet, for me anyway. But it's been a great one. And I got a whole page of information here that I'm going to keep forever and ever. The Baofengs were definitely the most common radio for people's first radios. Baofengs of one kind or another, but everybody probably suspected that would happen anyway. I certainly did. Any other questions or comments for the net this evening?
KJM.
BAM.
SOR.
SOR, stand by. Kyle, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you want this net to keep going, we can keep it going. I was going to ask about HF digital modes and what is most common for like keyboard-to-keyboard type stuff. I just started doing a little bit of research into it today and saw something about JS8 call, but if anybody has more experience in HF digital modes, I would love to pick their brain about it, maybe after the net, because there's a few other people in line after me and I don't want to hog it too much, but there's my question, so I'll turn it back over to net W0, KJM.
EMP.
Go ahead, Greg.
I'll stay after.
SOR, go ahead. It's SOR. First of all, I just wanted to thank you, Bart. This is the first time I've been on the TechNet, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It certainly won't be my last. Just as a side, I made, while I was listening to everybody, paying attention, I made 27 contacts on FT8. So I did double duty tonight. But again, I appreciate your efforts, Bart, and I appreciate the net, and I will certainly enjoy it again. Thank you very much. KE0 SOR.
Well, thank you, Mike. That's good to hear. And I will briefly announce that we do need net control operators for this TechNet. We have a couple. We've lost some. It's a really, really easy net to run. And as I have said, probably, and everybody's rolling their eyes now because I say this all the time, get on a net, learn to do net control when it's not really super important. It is important for people to learn how to do it. You do not want to try to learn how to do it when somebody's health or safety depends on you. That is a dangerous time to try to learn stuff. It's not hard to learn at all, 3 or 4 times through the net, and it'll be comparatively easy. Everybody's a little bit different. George, I remember when you first started doing the net. How many nets did it take you to get comfortable with it?
K3SAD. My first net was perfect, and I got rave reviews. But other than that, they've been downhill ever since. Back to net.
You know, sometimes you're awesome, and sometimes you're not much help. But I remember you taking it on because whether it was because of me or somebody else, but I remember it was recommended. And this is how you give back to ham radio. You learn to be net control, learn it when it doesn't count, so that when it does count, you know how to do it. This net, the club net, there's lots of nets that you can do. You don't want to wait until there's a tornado on the ground to learn to do net control. You don't want to wait until 10 miles away from your house there's a forest fire that's out of control when you try to learn to do net control. That is not the time to learn. That is why I stress, learn it when it's easy. This net is easy. Come in and do it 2 or 3 times. If you want somebody to sit down beside you and walk you through it, I would be happy to do that. So would several other people that I know. Anyway, that's it. Okay. I want to thank everyone for checking in. I have 25 check-ins, including me, and that is the best I've done for a while. It's been an hour and 12 minutes. Very long net. I want to thank each and every one of you for participating, and see you again next Monday night. I don't remember who's up after me, but it'll be somebody else, but I'll certainly be there anyway. 731 and all, and Kyle and Greg, if you're still there, carry on with your HF conversation, because I want to know a little bit more about that myself, so I'll be listening. And then 0NYY returning the net to its normal conversational non-net.
This presentation was brought to you by the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. For more information, visit our website, ncarc.net. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.